Okay, so welcome and good morning. I'm going to hide my camera for now. This is the UniConnect AccessHE third virtual coffee morning, and this morning we're going to be looking a bit at the Ofqual analysis and what the implications are for sort of disadvantaged students, but we're also going to have two guest speakers, excitingly, and hearing from what they've been doing in adapting their offer to become online, like lots of industries have, but how they are continuing to support those learners that need that the most. So just a few notes about housekeeping. So there will be lots of opportunity to speak throughout the session this morning, so please remember to unmute. If you're not speaking, please do keep your mics on mute, just to avoid feedback while we're going through. If you're feeling a little shy, that's absolutely fine. We've got the chat function, so please do post any questions in there, and myself and the team will be keeping the tabs on that, and we'll answer as many questions as we can throughout. There is also, informed with Zoom, the ability to raise your hand virtually. So if you want to speak, please select raise your hand, and we'll answer your questions as we go through. And finally, just a really quick note that this meeting will be recorded, and we'll share copies afterwards. So if you're a bit shy and you don't want to be on camera, just to let you know that this is being recorded. So without further ado, we'll kick off. So ask me to progress to. So today, as mentioned, we're going to be thinking a little bit briefly about what the latest Ofqual guidance means for disadvantaged students entering higher education and considering that this year. We've got two guest speakers, which is really exciting. So we have Sophie Alexis, who is the Education Liaison and Outreach Officer from Middlesex University London. And we also have joining us from the University of West London, Helen Carter, who is the Student Recruitment Team Leader. And they're both going to be talking through recent events that they've held online, and sort of the challenges and the successes of that, how we can sort of learn from that, and other WP teams can learn and progress, but also how teachers and schools can access those, and how they can sign up. So to kick us off then, we will talk a bit about Ofqual, and it's an ever-changing landscape, as you'll all be aware. With COVID, everything seems to be changing by the second, so it's, I'm sure you'll all agree, quite a challenge to try and keep on top of that. So we've tried to summarise the latest developments in a simple way. So exams have been cancelled, we know that. But how will grades be assessed? I think that's one of the biggest concerns that students, parents and teachers have at the moment. So schools and colleges will need to provide a grade and a rank for each student in each subject. And this will all need to be done by the 29th of May. So there isn't a great deal of time for teachers to pull that data together. In an attempt to try and standardise that, and because there are concerns about the sort of human error that might come with that, Ofqual are talking about standardising grades using historical data from each centre to try and make sure that's a fair process, but obviously there are challenges around that as well. So yeah, there are lots of people talking about it at the moment, including the Sutton Trust, who we'll sort of come on to in a moment. It's also quite challenging for those who are completing sort of vocational and technical qualifications. There has been less information for those groups of students, and it's not yet been confirmed how they will be assessed. So there's talk about those students also having a grade and a rank in the same way for other students, but we're unsure at the moment how that will be assessed, and obviously with them being vocational courses, there are problems with that as well. So it's also a concern for people studying creative subjects. I'm going to hand over to Beth now, who's going to talk about how creative subjects will be impacted by the Ofqual updates.
Yes, thanks Michelle. Can everyone hear me all right? Thumbs up's good. Great. Hi. Yeah, nice to see all of you here. I cover the creative portfolio for the UniConnect Outreach Hub, and I was actually looking into portfolios themselves because obviously students that will be applying to more creative subjects might need a film reel or an art portfolio. And now that schools are shut and those resources are kind of taken away, the access to such provisions, I think, are more limited, particularly for underrepresented students. So I looked into kind of some of the university responses to portfolios and their submissions, given the current circumstances. And the government really doesn't offer anything specific around creative subjects. So I think the onus is really on HEIs and universities themselves to take the lead on that. But, you know, once I've had a look at this, I found that it's very much sort of ad hoc. So we all know that open events and interviews have been cancelled. We'll be hearing about the response to that later today. And interviews for applicants are being moved online. Portfolios must be emailed now. So, for example, send your full portfolio as a PDF file. Maximum size can be this. Send a link. We won't accept Word documents or URLs or websites and things like that. So it appears that, of course, contextual admissions universities are considering all applications with equity, but there isn't really specific guidance as to how to successfully apply to their creative subjects given the context of COVID-19. So, well, what about applicants from underrepresented backgrounds who might not be able to send a PDF or have access to materials and tools in order to really create a professional portfolio? I'd be keen to hear on people's thoughts about, particularly from schools, the few that are here today, whether that would be something that they'd like more guidance with about how to guide Year 13 or Year 12 students hoping to apply to creative subjects. But also I'll be raising this within AccessHE's Creative Forum in the coming weeks about how perhaps more of a unified response and more thought can be done to amend this. So if anyone has any thoughts, do raise it at the end, or feel free to talk to me privately. But that's what I found at the moment. So it's hopeful in that contextual admissions and universities are still treating applications with equity, but I do think there needs to be more guidance for particular subjects around applications and admissions at this time. Back to you, Michelle.
Fantastic. Thank you, Beth. I think your thoughts there as well are sort of echoed by lots of trusts who are concerned with, like you say, contextual admissions and how they're going to be applied in such a unique setting and situation. So definitely lots of concerns around there, and I think us all working together as stakeholders and different key people in education, I think that's the most important thing, to make sure it's a really fair process. Some of the other things that have been raised that are concerning about these changes, about the Ofqual changes, inevitably people are going to, or some people will be sort of contesting the grades that they have been given. There will be lots of students that perhaps aren't happy with what the grades that they've been given, that the appeals process is very complicated and costly. So unfortunately, this might further shut out disadvantaged groups if they can't afford to go through that process. So that's something that the Sutton Trust are really pushing for, that those barriers are removed as much as possible. So that's something that they're concerned about. The Runnymede Trust have submitted an open letter to the government about the impact that these changes will have on BME students. So for them, there's a real concern that there's over a quarter of Black and minority ethnic GCSE students who are on free school meals, and a really high proportion within that are from Gypsy, Roma and Irish traveller backgrounds as well. So they're really concerned that the Ofqual changes are going to disproportionately impact that group. So they are calling on more support for teachers to be able to assess grades equally, and talk of an equality impact assessment, and more training around that for that group. So this week as well, so like I say, it's a very quick changing landscape all the time, and this week the government have launched a consultation paper on all the proposed changes and how grades are going to be assessed over the summer. So it goes through a few different things, and they're seeking advice and thoughts from students, from teachers, from parents, from universities, from lots and lots of different stakeholders. And I think given the impact that this is going to have on disadvantaged students, I think if anyone can respond to that consultation with their thoughts and insights, it'll be really important to collate that. It's only open for 2 weeks. It's open until the 29th of April. So if you do feel really passionate about this subject, we'd recommend responding to that by the 29th of April. I'm just going to talk very briefly about what the consultation covers. So it talks about the changes. So initially Year 10 students weren't going to get their grades this year. That's changed, so now they're going to be receiving their grades, which is, I think, a positive thing, but they're seeking thoughts on that and the impact of that. They talk about the proposals that are going to be put forward for private candidates, and private candidates are those students that are perhaps studying remotely and don't have the same relationship with, say, a school, and with that centre that they're learning through. So how can that centre submit a grade on their behalf when they don't have the same relationship? So there's a real lack of clarity there, and real concern. And if you go on Twitter, you can see that those students are understandably really anxious about what's going to happen. So yeah, there's talk of them doing exams in autumn as well. So that might be one solution. But again, they're seeking thoughts from teachers and universities on this. There's talk about the standardisation of centre assessment grades, and thinking about that bias that the Sutton Trust and the Runnymede Trust have identified. I think that's a really crucial thing that people can submit their thoughts on. And the appeals process as well. So there's talk about the appeals process within that consultation. And I think frustratingly, it seems that the appeal process is quite limiting, in that you can only appeal a decision if it's to do with data. So it not necessarily sort of teacher judgment. So a student might feel like their teacher perhaps doesn't like them, or there's an issue there, and they can't contest that. It has to be evidence using data. So I think there's probably some frustrations around that as well. So again, submitting your thoughts on that will be really important. Finally, there's talk, this is, sorry, not related to the consultation, but there has been recent news this week that exam results will be confirmed in August as planned at the beginning of the year, which is positive in some ways. However, for those students that haven't been in school since March, they won't have received the same amount of careers advice and higher education guidance and pathways guidance. So how are we going to support those students that don't get their first offer to university or their second offer? Who's going to be contacting them about the clearance process? So I think that's something to think about as well, and how that will particularly impact disadvantaged groups that perhaps aren't as engaged. So yeah, something really important to think about. So while it is quite a bleak picture at the moment, there are lots of positive things happening, and I think this leads us nicely on to our guest speakers and thinking about how universities are adapting their offer at the moment to ensure that those students aren't missing out from those taster days and those advice sessions on finance and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to hand over to Sophie now from Middlesex to talk through a recent event that they have held and how they're adapting in the current landscape.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Sophie, and yeah, I work at Middlesex Uni in the Education Liaison Department, and my main role is working with post-16. But we do have a quite big team that work with pre-16 as well. So recently we did a undergraduate open event or open evening. This wasn't our first virtual event that we've done. We have done other virtual events prior to the whole kind of COVID crisis, but not on such a big scale. And actually this event is probably our most successful online virtual event so far. But we basically had quite a short turnaround time to get it done. And I'm really proud of everyone actually kind of pulling together and getting this event on board. Basically, the week before this, we had a postgraduate event, but we only used one platform for that, which was the Unibuddy platform. And so for this event, we used two platforms, which is why I kind of chose this one to talk about. And that postgraduate event, up until that point, was the most successful online event we've done. And then this one came in, and now this one is the most successful in terms of numbers and kind of what we did to kind of make it so successful. So yeah, thank you. So it took place on the 1st of April. So we only really had maybe a week and a half to kind of turn it around. It was originally going to be like an applicant offer holder experience type session. But then when we realised we weren't going to be able to house people on campus, we thought actually let's kind of expand it and make it into more of a open evening. So it was a 3-hour open evening that took place on Wednesday the 1st of April, and actually yeah, it was really, really successful. The platforms that we used were really good. I think mainly if we do anything different, it's going to be kind of like operational wise, but we used both Zoom and Unibuddy to host this event, and in total we had around 36 webinars that were scheduled for different times, and I'll show you both of those, how they kind of looked on the day, and then 14 different Unibuddy chat rooms, which basically looked at things like the support services we've got, finances, admissions, accommodation, as well as lecturers from different departments were also giving advice and guidance about their courses. So we had lots of different departmental chats as well that were available. We had over about 100 staff that kind of worked together to make the event work. So with this, it basically replicated exactly the amount of resource and staff that we would have had on an open day anyway. The only difference was we didn't probably have as many ambassadors as we might have, but we still had students and things like that available for chatting on the day. And yeah, we had 442 prospective students attend the virtual event, and 200 of those, or just over 200, were offer holders. Can you move my slide? Thank you. So this was how the web page looked. It did look slightly different, but you can still access the offer using that link that's at the top of this slide. On the day, these kind of scheduled talks were in kind of like button format, but this kind of gives you an idea of how we scheduled the event. So we had, just with any kind of normal open day, we had a welcome talk, and then we had lots of generic talks, and in Education Liaison we ran 4 sessions. So one was on applying to UCAS, one was on personal statements, student finance, wellbeing, and then jobs of the future. And then we had departmental sessions. So they lasted for around 20 minutes, but people could nip in, and they were run on Zoom just like this. They could nip in and listen to the presentation. They were able to ask questions, use the Q&A function, as well as the private chat function. And that seemed to work really well. The only thing that we had a problem with was that around 6 p.m, we all seemed to get kicked out of the Zoom platform. So that is obviously one of the downsides to using online software, but we think that might just be because it was 6 o'clock and either everyone's logging off or a new set of people somewhere in the world are logging on, and there seemed to just be a problem there. But other than that, that was around 5 minutes worth of hassle, and it was back to normal again, and we seemed to retain the same amount of students in the session, so that was really positive. We did notice, obviously, though, with the amount of time that we had, we were able to kind of pull this off, and actually that is a hell of a lot of kind of different talks and things like that that we kind of pulled off. Teachers and our lecturers were really kind of responsive, and they were able to deliver some very good presentations. There is a point around training though as well. Our academics are using online platforms to deliver their lectures and seminars and tutorials at the moment, but some are obviously more confident than others. So if you're going to be using this, it's probably good to make sure everyone's like fully trained on it. We had done some training, but when we've done kind of spot checks in the in the kind of talks that we were doing on the day, we noticed that some lecturers had more of the kind of experiential elements to their presentations, whereas some were just doing the very like standard PowerPoint stuff. Some lecturers were able to use the green screen function that Zoom has and then put their presentation on the green screen, or use different kind of pictures that made it a bit more exciting, and some weren't as techie. So that's like a thing to kind of think about if you're going to be using this. But overall, good responses. The VC came in and was really happy with it, so that's always a positive. So in terms of UniBuddy, this is, would you mind going to the next slide? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
This is just a kind of example of what it looked like. This wasn't what it looked like on the day, but down the on the left hand side, sorry, there were 14 different chat functions, and then in the kind of center there's like a generic chat, so people could ask generic questions and then be guided to a specific chat, or in the webinars we were guiding them to different chat rooms depending on what their kind of question was. But we had things around admissions, accommodation, we had a specific personal statement one, and then the academics had their own chat function as well. Thank you. So now from that, we've now made an online virtual offer. So we already had ability to do the virtual tours and see facilities, but now we've kind of pulled all of our resources together because we had lots of different content sitting kind of everywhere in the website. So we've got lots of student videos that are really great and give a real good insight into what it's like to study, as well as kind of helping people if they're just kind of thinking about their options. We had our virtual tour, as I just said, and we in the Ed Liaison department have a kind of wealth of resources. So we've added those all onto one main page, and people can kind of access the virtual offer. So it kind of gives them every bit of information about us that they should hopefully need to kind of make their decision. So because we now feel confident, we're able to, in Ed Liaison, for instance, take these elements that we've learned and put on a kind of more bespoke virtual experience. So we had lots of taster days planned, as I'm sure other universities did. And we now kind of feel confident that we're going to be able to deliver not the same amount of time, so it wouldn't be a full taster day. There might not be the same kind of practical elements, but using the online platforms that we have been using, such as Zoom, they have breakout options and breakout rooms. I was in a webinar yesterday and that was really successful. You can do small group working. We'll definitely be able to do some things with our academics and with schools that will kind of have the same elements as they might have had when they were coming in to kind of find out a bit more about subject specific stuff. And we're also now doing in Ed Liaison some online webinar series, so some live webinars, and we've also got the option to pre-record things as well so that people can access at any time. So we've got some webinars starting on the 27th of April, a whole host on a Tuesday for teachers and advisors around kind of looking after their mental health, as well as how they can support their students virtually, any tips and tricks that we've got, as well as lots for students in terms of helping them with their personal statements, student finance, and some more bespoke things around looking at the disadvantaged groups. We have always had a chat function. So we've always used Unibuddy to allow our students to chat online, but we've now got a student hangout happening every day, as well as our careers, a lady in our team, Z, she is a qualified careers advisor, but she works on the WP projects with NCOP, but she's able to provide careers advice for students from, I think it's 9 till 3 every day, as well as talking to teachers and advisors as well. So we had these functionalities, but we've kind of brought them all together now, and they're all in one place. So yeah, I think it's been very positive. It's been a lot of work, but it has been very, very positive. So yeah, that's it from me, really.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sophie. And yeah, just amazing that, like you say, you managed to pull this all together within almost like a week and a half, and yeah, just moving very quickly in a very quick changing landscape. And it's great to see, like you say, that sort of starting to create bespoke sessions for specific groups and specific areas. There will be lots of time for questions at the end, but I'm just going to ask a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to hear how the sort of engagement has been from the students. Like, have you had feedback on sort of how engaging they've been, if it's different online? Obviously there are differences, but how has the engagement been with those events?
So yeah, with the event, yeah, it's been very positive, and actually I think the fact that within a week and a half we managed to get we had around, I think it was about just over or near to around 1,000 book on for this event, and then 448, I think it was, signed up on the actual day. So that was really, really positive. But we may also have had people just kind of pop on that weren't originally on the list to sign up. So those numbers we're not 100% sure of. But I think that has been really positive. The one thing that we are just finding our feet on is in Ed Liaison. We were kind of inundated, potentially doing like 8 events a day in some cases. That is obviously not the same at the moment. So we are still kind of finding our feet in that sense. But we have had traffic to our web pages and people are downloading our resources, which is positive. But we obviously we know how difficult it is to kind of manage their time at the moment, because they've got a lot to do. Students have got a hell of a lot to do, and teachers and advisors have got a lot to do as well. So we are exploring the options of being able to kind of piggyback onto their online platform. So lots of schools have Unifrog and things like that that can house our resources. So it's how we can take what we've got, make it kind of a bit more of a bespoke package for a school or a college, and then how they can then use that on their platform, or how we can integrate into the curriculum that they're kind of teaching to their schools at the moment. But we do know that there is a massive piece around the disadvantaged group. So we've got the online webinars that they can access from their phone, but then there is still the conversation around those that don't have access to the internet, or those that don't have access to facilities. So they don't have a laptop, they may have a phone, but actually the internet will run out quite quickly. How do we then support those students? So we've got these specific webinars for them. So we're running kind of webinars around disability support, careers advice, that can be accessed by anybody, but actually they are kind of tailored more to those groups of students. And lots of our support services that Middlesex have are now doing kind of one-to-one virtual offer. However, if they don't have those facilities, we need to work with schools to work out how they're reaching out to those students, and actually then how can we change that online offer that we've got? Is it a worksheet? Is it using our app that we've got? Because at the moment that's not being used as much. It's normally used for events. Do we use the app because actually that's a bit more user friendly? And if they have a phone, they can access that. Can they use it offline, or all those sorts of things? That's still a kind of piece that we've got to work on. But for the kind of very quick response, everything's gone online, and then we now need to kind of break it down and work out how we're going to also reach other people that might not still be able to access the internet.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much. I think sort of understanding obviously lots of different schools use different programs, and I think that's a challenge in itself. And like you say about using Unifrog and trying to align all that together is quite a jigsaw, isn't it? So it's great to hear that that's moving towards that. And I think the piece around this work being accessible and students having laptops and that sort of thing, I think there are online charities now, or charities that are trying to get those disadvantaged students online and access to tablets and computers. So yeah, so important that they have access to the same as their peers. But thank you so much, Sophie. That was really interesting. And now I'm going to hand over to Helen to talk about some of the events that you've been hosting at UWL and how you've transitioned online as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. And that was a really interesting presentation, Sophie. I think some of the things that I talk about in this presentation will probably echo some of the things that Middlesex have been doing, and some will be slightly different. Okay, so to start with, we'll just go through, yeah, if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. The who, what, where and when. So who could attend our online open day? So it was open for anyone to attend. So we didn't actually have, there was no sign up required to access the event. So obviously we invited everybody that had booked onto the original on-campus event to attend this, but on the day people could just click on the online open day tab on our website, and they could go through and access those pages. I will go a bit into it a bit later on about Zoom. Obviously we had a registration required for that, but in general, to access all of our videos and everything, there wasn't any kind of sign up. So what was it? So we called it an online open day experience. So it was a combination of pre-recorded videos, live chats, which we used Zoom for, and we also had a couple of Twitter Q&As. Where was it? So obviously online. We used the, and it was on the UWL website, and we used the Zoom platform. It was on Saturday the 28th of March, so the website was live for the whole day with access to those videos, but we only had our live chats running from 10 o'clock until 3 o'clock. Okay, next slide, thank you. So what could attendees do on the day? So I'll start with the videos. So we had a number of pre-recorded videos that were available to attendees to watch. So we had introductions to our 9 academic schools, and we also had a general university welcome talk, as we would at a on-campus open day. We had a selection of course-specific videos available. And then we had 2 general ones, so applying to university, which was looking at the personal statement and kind of top tips for that. And we had one on our University of West London student support services. I will come to sort of some of the challenges in the next couple of slides that surrounded those, and why I've put things like a selection of course specific videos, but I'll come to that a bit later on. We then had some Zoom Q&A sessions, so the ones that are listed there. So we basically decided to target, due to the short time frame that we had, we targeted some of where we had the most booking numbers, so course areas where we had the most booking numbers for the on-campus open day. We decided to move forward and do live Q&As for those. That was performing arts, nursing, midwifery, culinary arts, psychology courses. And we also have found at our on-campus open days that our academic support Q&A is a really popular one. We have our head of engagement and retention was the host for that. She started at University of West London as a mature learner. We have a high mature learner student population, so that was something that was we ran on the day and was really successful. We then had a student wellbeing Twitter Q&A and a careers service Q&A. So those 2 teams came forward and said that they wanted to do something actively on Twitter. We then had other resources available on the page, so students could take a virtual tour of the campus. We have that available all year round. That's always there for people to have a look at, but we just made that more prominent on our webpage. So with the Zoom Q&As, that's where we people did have to sign up to attend those the Zoom Q&As. Everything else, it was just a case that they could go onto the website, watch the platforms, and take part in whatever they wanted to. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So challenges, as Sophie said, we had a very short time frame in which to turn this around. So I think the decision was kind of made to cancel the on-campus event kind of 2 weeks before the open day. So that was particularly challenging in terms of, actually we wanted our videos and our subject videos to be up to date. So we had to get all of those recorded. Whilst we were recording them on campus, we then obviously went into kind of full lockdown, and then some of those had to be recorded online. The logistics around that was slightly tricky, just getting people to record those. Navigating new platforms, as I'm sure everybody is aware of, that's from our perspective, our academics, from people who are attending the open day, that can obviously prove challenging. And measuring the success is actually something that is much more difficult, because if you're making this open for everybody to be able to attend without them having to book on, it's difficult to track attendance. I'll go into some of our numbers a bit on the next slide, but usually we would follow up with people and say, thanks for attending, sorry you couldn't attend, and that's something that's a bit more tricky when you can't track the attendance. And similarly, collecting feedback. So at our on-campus events, we will collect feedback from students as they're walking out the door, and also ask them to submit some online feedback afterwards. But that's much more difficult when you can't identify exactly who has attended the online event. And ensuring engaging interaction. So we had a lot of videos available for people to watch, and we had a selection of live Q&As, probably not as many live Q&As as we would like, and I think moving forward we would have more on an online open day. And we've since moved forward and have put a lot of those online for people to access. But I think you need to make sure, call it an open day, that there is a lot of kind of live interaction as well. And I think that's something that on the day we didn't have as much maybe as we would like. So moving forward, it's something we'd like. Okay, but on a more positive note, the successes, which is the next slide, thank you. So we were really pleased with the number of video views and attendees for live Q&A sessions. So our videos were watched just over 800 times. We had just under 650 visitors to the page on the day, which we were really pleased about. Obviously, we've not done this before, so for us, we don't have anything to compare that to. So we're happy with those numbers at the moment, and obviously when we do the next one, we'll have a bit more comparison. Positive interactions in the live Q&As, that is simply going by people's comments at the end of the sessions. So we've had some lovely comments from people spring, that they found it really useful, they found presentations really interesting, but as I said, it's difficult to track feedback, so we're kind of taking those positive interactions as part of that. We found that actually people have adapted really quickly to using the new systems, kind of academics as well. And I think what that means is that moving forward, this would be a smoother process to organise. It won't be a kind of first time situation where people are a bit nervous about using it. Actually now, hopefully people will have a bit more confidence in doing that. There's also something, obviously the ideal scenario is that people can come online, to come on campus and take part in lectures and come and visit the campus, but there is something behind the fact that people do seem to feel a bit more confident in asking questions behind the computer screen. Whether or not that's a good or a bad thing, who knows, but you can, on Zoom, you can tag yourself as an anonymous attendee, and so people can ask any kind of questions they want and not feel nervous about it. The other success is we now have a whole load of a bank of resources that are kind of readily available to us. So our videos are up to date with the most relevant information, so we have those to reuse if and when we want to. And there were actually no major technical issues on the day, which is a plus. We always give a bit of a disclaimer at the start of our Zoom Q&As, just because obviously my face can freeze on screen quite a lot, but actually on the day all seems to go very smoothly. Okay, yeah, next slide, thank you. So moving forward, so since the online open day, we've basically taken the kind of positive interaction from the Zoom Q&As and from the numbers that we got in the Q&A sessions on the day, and we've ran a lot more since then. So we've run 22 subject-specific live Q&As via Zoom, and we're continuing to do more in April and May. So there's a little there's a screenshot at the side where you can just see some of them. So this week we ran a biomedical sciences information afternoon, and we had a taster lecture as part of that. We've done travel and tourism, visual effects. So those are all accessible by going to the University of West London homepage, and then you click and there's a main banner at the top that takes you through there. We're also now starting to run some more general webinars, so on personal statements, student funding, admissions. We're doing an Ask Admissions Q&A, and we're doing a chat to our students. Obviously it's incredibly valuable to get our students involved in this. I think that's probably something that was missing on our open day on the 28th of March, just in terms of the time frame and everything sort of being a bit up in the air. But moving forward, I'd like to get a lot more involvement with them, because at an on-campus open day we have them, they are incredible, and we have them everywhere helping out, so we want to move forward with that. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So these are just some of the upcoming Q&As. So if you are a teacher or careers advisor and you want to share these, then these are the ones that we currently have available. As I said, we'll be adding more throughout April and May as well. You can find these just by going on the university homepage and clicking on the banner, and then it will take you through to the list where these are. We found an hour to be quite a good amount of time, so we try and do it so it's around half an hour presentation, half an hour Q&A. So just to break it up a little bit, and also from a logistics point of view, we always get if we're working with academics or whoever we're working with, we get them to sign on 15 minutes before, we give them a briefing, and just resolve any technical issues if there are any. Okay, next slide. Cool, thank you. So just other ways that students can engage with us if you are a teacher or a careers advisor. So we are looking at running some more online taster sessions. So actually the sessions that we've been running so far have been a bit more kind of, this is what the course is about, ask us questions about the course, but we're looking at running some more kind of taster lecture style activities, or more around a particular sort of, maybe a topic of debate that people can get involved with. So that's just something to look out for. We obviously have all of our social media channels, so Twitter, Instagram, we're very active on there, so if people do want to ask any questions through that, they can. We also we have our lecturers' contact details are on our website, so if anybody goes to a course page, we've got a staff profile, and if you click through there it takes them to that. And I think that's something that I've noticed in these Q&As. Academics have been really keen for students to get in contact with them directly, so I think people shouldn't be shy about doing that. They can just get the answers that they need immediately. And then we've just kind of got a basic, we've got a standard phone number that takes you through to our course information centre, who can direct students kind of anywhere in the university, direct their query anywhere. And then the final slide. Thank you. So if you do have any questions about any of these activities, if you're a teacher or a careers advisor, then this is our email address. So if you want any of the links sending to you, or if you want to get involved in any of the activities or want more information, then yeah, please get in contact with us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Helen. That was really interesting. And again, just so impressive, the sheer volume of stuff that universities have been able to pull together for students in, like, 10 days. It's great to see, so thank you so much. I think what is really interesting as well from hearing both of the universities speak is that while there are barriers around accessibility and being able to get online, and obviously that is a huge challenge, I think what's really positive is that there are sort of no limits on numbers to people signing up to these events. So actually, where before perhaps there was a bit of a limit on how many people could go to campus, that's been removed. Like you say, academics are really engaged, and that's so powerful to be able to hear directly from you know, a subject leader and hear about that subject. So while there are some huge challenges, it sounds like there are some real success stories coming out as well. So amazing to hear. So thank you so much, Sophie and Helen. That was really interesting. I'm going to hand over. I haven't been able to keep an eye on the questions, so if there are any questions that have come up, please do feel free to unmute yourselves and ask Sophie and Helen some questions, or any of us in the UniConnect team. I will, pause there to allow for any questions if there are any.
I have a question for Sophie and Helen. Well, thanks. First of all, that's so interesting, and I really like obviously, Sophie, how you were saying about how it's immediately become virtual, and now it's thinking about those facilities, like you said, and Helen, with sort of those more bespoke Q&A live sessions. I wonder, it's kind of like bringing up Brexit, isn't it? How much was coronavirus and COVID-19 brought up from students? We did a session on student mental health and well-being at the last coffee morning, and just talking about some of those anxieties, and I think that's what has popped up in the chat as well. So how much was it sort of business as usual and people asking, you know, details about courses, or how much was it, you know, will I be able to come to your institution come September?
Yeah, I mean, for us, a bit of a mixture. I'd say more heavily weighted towards kind of business as usual, normal sort of standard questions about the university and starting. But what I found thinking about it now is actually the people that have been asking the questions more related to coronavirus are people that they say in their question, I'm starting in September 2020. Will my course be starting late, or anything like that? So obviously we get a mixture of people that are wanting to start this year, next year, it might be 5 years' time. We have had a few from people, from offer holders, asking about that, mainly around whether or not the course is going to be delayed. At the moment, it's not. We're not aware that anything is going to be, in terms of school of courses starting late. Obviously, we're continuing to teach everything online at the moment. So there have been some, but I'd say the majority have still been sort of normal questions that we get asked. But I don't know, Sophie, is that have you found?
Yeah, so we've a bit of both. So in our admissions team, the chat level has gone up, but I think that's purely because people can't call. But there are lots of questions around. I don't really know if I'm going to get the same grades as I would have got before. We do have quite a high proportion of I don't know. Middlesex is kind of like the middleman university, if that makes sense. So we get students that aren't like real high achievers, but there are also still the anxieties around kind of, I was predicted 3 Bs, but actually I don't know if my teacher is going to be able to give me that now, because I would have been doing all these extra things to kind of improve my grade, and I would have been confident that in the exam I would have got that grade, but now I'm not sure because I'm not seeing that teacher. So we have got that level of anxiety still in the questions that get asked. So that has prompted, we've got like a massive banner on our front page that has lots of FAQs around what's going to happen with my offer, what's going to happen in terms of like the teaching time. And it's the same as what you said, in terms of at the moment we are hoping we can go back in September, but we will make provision, and we are kind of efficiently teaching online at the moment. So if that is the case, then we've got things in place. But all of our presentations, so all of the ones that Ed Liaison did, were all around kind of the tone of voice had changed to just say, we understand you're in a difficult situation, but these are the very practical things that you can do to kind of keep a bit of normality. And we put in an extra presentation around well-being. So there were 2 well-being presentations. One was for student, like when they come to us, what well-being support is available, but then the other one from us in Ed Liaison was more about how they can kind of practically improve their well-being, their anxiety levels and things like that now, while they're thinking about coming to university, or if they're not, what they can do to kind of just practically improve their kind of levels of anxiety if they have that. And actually lots of the lectures, so even in like the biosciences ones that I kind of dipped into, they were bringing it back to corona, but very practically, and saying actually these sciences are now becoming really important because of what's happened. So I think they kind of diffuse the situation, while it is really relevant to everything that's going on at the moment, and I don't think you can get away from it. But yeah, we had a mixture of both, people that were very practical and just like, yeah, I'm coming to uni, I know what I want to do, when have I got to do it by, but we also did have the questions around what's going to happen with my offer, what's going to happen with accommodation, I need to apply for DSA, like what do I do, how am I going to get access to the support that I need. Yeah, so it was a bit of a mixture of both, but
okay, thanks. Well, it sounds like both of you are quite well, equipped to be able to deal with those questions anyway.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't know about you, Helen, our admissions team is very much like, we'll look at everyone's offer bespokely, and kind of we're not making any assumptions, we'll just look at what you've got, and then kind of make considerations, or in some cases allowances, depending on people's personal circumstances, and they can't like rule out anything until they like fully see the application in its entirety.
Yeah, that's similar to us as well. And something else that we, just going back to the Q&As a bit, that we're kind of asking our lecturers in the live Q&As is what they think students that are due to be starting in September can be doing now. So we're in isolation, but there's a whole range of things that they can be doing. So they've been giving some really useful tips on online resources, whether it's for different subject areas. So graphic design have been giving their tips on what people can do, criminology on looking at reading certain books, looking at certain news articles and things like that. So we've been trying to ask that as well, so that people have to sort of start preparing people. But because obviously with things like nursing, people would typically be going out and maybe getting a bit of voluntary experience, working in a community centre or working in a hospital or anywhere, but that's not happening. So they've been giving some really great advice on what people can be doing. So yeah, we're going to try and take that information and communicate that to our people that are due to start in September. Yeah,
that would be really interesting, I think, for to share with sort of our school's network as well. Particularly, as you say, because of sort of personal statement writing and the portfolios that I mentioned. So it'd be great for you to share that with us when it's ready. Thanks both. That's great.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone on the call?
I had a couple, one for each of you, Sophie and Helen, if that's okay. My camera's off because my internet is very dodgy, so apologies. I'm Gideon. I'm Queen Mary. I work in student recruitment and WP at Wyndham Participation. Hi everyone. Just quickly also to say congrats both of you on what sound like brilliant events, and with such a short turnaround time. Brilliant efforts all round. I'm aware we don't have much time, so I'll crack on. Sophie, first for you. I was interested in what you were saying about the links with the careers team and the careers advisor that you have. I think you talked about there being like a period of time that would be available, that the careers advisor would be available and like field questions from students, and that would happen like periodically. I wondered if you could say more about how that's working, like practically, like how often is that slot available, and how popular is the offer? Because that isn't something we have done so much, from what I can tell, linking with careers, but that is an interesting piece, I think.
Yeah, so she's available every day, 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. And she is available via, so there's so many different platforms, it ends up going into like a different chat service, which is the same as the admissions team use. But yeah, she's available every day, so Monday to Friday. And obviously not on bank holidays. So far, it's been a little slow, and I just think that's because it's new. We have been promoting it via our network of teachers and advisors and kind of stakeholders, but the uptake has been slow, if I'm honest. But we're hoping that will improve. The chat can be used on a phone, so she'll answer the questions kind of live, but it is a good little function if you have someone who is available that can do that, because I guess that then takes the pressure off of schools and colleges sometimes. But yeah, we do need, there is a piece around kind of promoting that a little bit more, but it's only really been introduced maybe 2 weeks now, I think, so it is quite new still.
Sure, thank you. No, that does make sense. Yeah, thank you for that answer to my question. The second one for you, Helen, was around what you were saying about all the sorts of the content you're creating, including the videos, and those being available just on your website without, you know, anybody having to sign in or register or anything like that. Because it's an ongoing conversation in my team. I mean, for context, I've come to my current role from an old UniConnect partnership, the one in South Yorkshire, and so I'm having to bring myself around to the idea that all the sort of recruitment WP work that we're doing is very much in the context of on behalf of the university as opposed to totally impartial now. And so it's this idea that we're wanting to capture the details of the students who are engaging with the content that we're creating and uploading, and the importance of that from a sort of, I guess, recruitment perspective for us. Is that something that there is much emphasis on in your team, or is it more just this idea that you want to get this stuff out and as many students can benefit from it as possible? And
yeah, we had a discussion about this as well, because initially we were kind of we thought about maybe only opening this up to people that had booked onto the original on-campus event, just to kind of as well make it seem a bit more, I suppose, bespoke to those people. But then we decided not to do that, and just thought if we have these resources available, I mean, it was sort of people had to click through it on the web page to be able to access it, so it was still kind of called an open day. Ideally, we want to be able to track who is coming to the page, and so that we can further engage with those students afterwards and provide more information, invite them to future online events. So that's something I think for our next open day we'll need to think about a bit more in terms of capturing that information and that data. It was just something that for this one we didn't necessarily have the time to do. But yeah, I don't know if that hugely answers your question, but it's been a challenge for us, and it's something that for the next one we're going to need to think about so that we can track attendance a bit better.
Sure, that does answer my question. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense as well in the shorter term, just wanting to get it all sort of up there and people using it, and then thinking a bit more longer term about how you can track that engagement. So no, that does answer my question. Thank you to both of you, and to you guys for hosting the webinar. I have to shoot.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Thank you for your question. Thank you. We are running very short of time, so I'm going to do a very quick wrap up. I had a big list of questions which Helen and Sophie, you covered in your presentations, and it was around how can teachers find out about what activity you're hosting, what are the next steps and next events. So you shared those, which is fantastic, but we will follow up and send all of those details in our newsletter on Monday. So for those careers leaders on the phone, keep an eye out for that, and we will share those and any other activity from our partners as well, HO partners. But yes, just to say a massive thank you to everyone that's joined us today, and a special thank you to Sophie and Helen. Please get in touch with us if you have any ideas for future coffee mornings, and the next one is next Friday, so please do keep an eye out for that. And yeah, just thank you very much, and have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Good weekend.
Bye.